Cul-ture. This is the issue of the day right now. So,
hello everybody. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Michael and Nancy James for putting on this event. They're really great people and they do a lot of great stuff. And seeing an academy like this, a private school like this, really gives me hope for the future of this country, because we wouldn't be having this conversation in the first place if kids in school across America went to schools like this. But let me introduce myself to you. I'm very pleased to be here with you this afternoon. I'd just like to introduce myself to you. My name is James Nelson. I'm Amberly's fourth child out of 7, so I'm right in the middle. I'm from Salem, Utah, and I currently play college basketball at a school in Idaho. And I was able to catch a break in my schedule, which allowed me to be here with you today, and I'm very grateful for that. Being the middle child that I am usually means that you are oftentimes overlooked or neglected. However, my mother, being the person that she is, never neglected me. The only thing that she was kind enough to really overlook was my sometimes mediocre attendance record in school, and for that I am quite grateful. However, growing up, there was always one area that my mom never overlooked or ignored. My mother, she did a great job teaching each and every one of us about the meaning of this country and the principles upon which it was founded. In this area, no stone was left unturned. I will never forget sitting in sheer awe as she spoke about the life and legacy of Abraham Lincoln. She spoke constantly and with great passion about the Declaration of Independence and with spiritual eloquence about the founding fathers of this country. Our mealtimes almost always were filled in one way or another with a political discussion about constitutional principles and about freedom and liberty. I can recall as a young child not being able to fully comprehend the eternal principles of liberty and freedom. In other words, though, I knew that those principles that she was trying to import on my conscience were important, but I didn't fully understand why. I couldn't really articulate it. The lessons that I learned as a child were very formative for me, and I believe they were responsible for the path that I'm currently on. I didn't really start to dedicate myself to understanding the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence until I received my patriarchal blessing at the age of 14. And in that blessing, it told me that I should study the Constitution because it was a heavenly banner. At 14 years old, I found it kind of strange because that kind of line wasn't used in any of my other siblings' blessings. And I took it as a sign, as a kind of a validation that the lessons that my mother had tried to teach me as a child were very important and that I should dedicate myself to that. And ever since that time, I have sought to study the Constitution and the founding principles of this country with all the intellectual and spiritual energy that I could muster. As I really began to immerse myself in this process of studying what makes this country different, as I really studied what makes this country so great, I began to realize that what makes this country the shining city on a hill that it really is the foundations of this country. And as I studied more and more, a patriotic zeal began to burn deeply inside of me. Over time and through the course of my life, I came to the realization that my life would be dedicated to this country and rescuing the principles of this country. The patriotic zeal that I spoke of earlier that God has given me has been an immense blessing in my life and has given me many great opportunities. Among those is being a chapter leader for an organization called Turning Point USA. An organization that I could not be more proud to work for. Turning Point USA is a nationwide political club that is on thousands of college and high school campuses across the country. I am so honored to be a leader of Turning Point USA because Turning Point USA is leading the cultural battle on the front lines in this country. And to any young person listening, I would encourage them to either join or start a chapter of Turning Point USA at their high school or college. We stand for free markets, freedom, and free speech. Being a leader in this organization, I have seen firsthand, even at a private Christian university, the destructive cultural trends that identity politics and cancel culture has had in this country's next generation. My generation faces a unique challenge because we're not at war, at least not yet, but we're not in a Great Depression, and we live in one of the most abundant times in human history. Modern technology and science has given us almost unimaginable prosperity and living conditions. Where then is the great struggle? Well, I believe it's kind of what Don was referring to earlier, that it's in the hearts and minds of the young people. Because the great struggle that my generation faces is an outright cultural war that seeks to wipe out the founding principles of this country and replace them with a twisted and a vile political system based on the Marxist ideas of identity politics and critical race theory. America has always stood for individual freedom and self-determination. But in this cultural crisis, my generation is being taught the reverse. Not only is it being taught in the classrooms, because revolutions are never confined to the classroom, it is being hammered and bullied into the brains by large social media companies, and my generation is feeling the brunt of their Marxist boot. To illustrate my point, I can think of no better example than what employees at Google are being taught. And just for context, Google is the largest source of information in the entire world. What I now share was leaked, and it shows just how radical and how far-reaching this cultural revolution really is. The most well-known proponent of critical race theory in this country is a Boston University professor called Abram X. Kendi. In his presentation on critical race theory, Kendi argues that all Americans, including children as young as 3 months old, are fundamentally racist. And I now quote directly from his presentation: "To be raised in the United States is to be raised to be racist. And to be raised racist is to be raised almost addicted to racist ideas." Among other things, he argues that any racial disparity in any outcome is a result of racism. For instance, he supports Harvard's decision to explicitly reject many Asian students because they systemically outperform other minorities. This is the same Harvard University, which, by the way, recently segregated their graduation ceremony by race so as to not upset the students. This radicalism, however, is not relegated to Ivy League schools. For instance, I will never forget the day when I was called into an administrator's office at my school, and I was politely asked to refrain from wearing any more patriotic t-shirts because it might upset my fellow students. And just to remind you, I go to a private Christian school, and one of my friends on the basketball team was telling me that at a class one day, he had a professor of theology, tell him to not refer to God as a he or as a man or as a him because we wouldn't want to assume God's gender. So this is not just confined to secular institutions. This is growing across all campuses across the country and to churches across the country. I could go on and on because the madness doesn't end there, and especially in the last year of 2020 with all the social justice warrior platforms that were being pushed, it really became almost unbearable. In other words, though, how can we expect the next generation of Americans to preserve, protect, and defend the United States of America if they think that it is top to bottom racist and unredeemable? The answer is that we can't if we do nothing. Our fate is not yet sealed because those of us who truly understand just how great and how important this country really is are unwilling to hand this country over to those who would destroy it. Recently, just yesterday actually, I spoke at an event that was similar to this. It was a celebration of Constitution Day in America because yesterday, 232 years ago, was the day that the Constitution was signed by 39 colonists. And in that speech, I said that if we don't save the culture of this country, we can't save the Constitution of this country. Andrew Breitbart once famously said that politics flows downstream from culture. We must revive and restore the love of liberty in this country, or else we will see it perish. It's just that simple. There can be no doubt that our country is in peril. That's why we're all here today. However, where many see a future of depression and slavery and collapse, I see a future rather of sacrifice, renewal, and triumph. I believe with my whole heart that like other generations in American history, my generation of Americans has a rendezvous with destiny. I believe that my generation has a historic opportunity to go down in history for saving this country from its own collapse. In his inaugural address, President Kennedy once famously said that in the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom at its maximum hour of danger. I believe that I'm eternally blessed to be able to be alive at such a time because the cause of freedom and liberty is the most noble and righteous of all the movements in human history. I remember when I was in high school, I was always depressed because I was always asking God, why am I alive at this time? Why couldn't I have been born 70 years ago, 80 years ago, 90 years ago? I used to always ask him. And I used to always say to my friends that I identify as a different generation because I just don't feel like I fit in this one. Yeah. But I believe I'm alive at the right time and for the right reason. But for those of you who might be alarmed at my idealism, I'll tell you that I don't believe that the struggle to save this nation and the principles thereof will be easy. I believe that it will take all the effort and all the courage that we can muster. The struggle will be long and trying, but I believe in the end that it'll be worth it. But the question should be asked, how can we do it? And this is a very important question, and I believe that it deserves an answer. In his farewell address, Ronald Reagan, my favorite president, said that change starts at the dinner table. Educate yourself, as well as your children and your grandchildren and your siblings, before you try to educate anyone else, as my mother did with me. Teach your children and those in your family that our rights are not given to us by a merciful government, but that they are the blessings from a loving Heavenly Father. Go to school board meetings and make it clear to your community and those in your community that we will not tolerate one iota of critical race theory or any other Marxist principles. Email your legislators. Make them hear your voice. Go to town halls. Start a book club. It doesn't have to be huge. You don't have to do everything, but you have to do something. Facebook posts are good, but we have to do a lot more than that. Above anything else, we have to act. And I don't mean just act. All action is good. We have to act with virtue, and we have to act with justice. Speaking in 1776, Dr. Joseph Warren, president of the Massachusetts Congress, prophetically said that our country is in danger, but not to be despaired of. On you depends the fortunes of America. You are to decide the important question upon which that rests the happiness and the liberty of millions yet unborn. Act worthy of yourselves. The fortunes of America do indeed depend upon us and what we are willing to do. Will we put passions into practice? Can we convert righteous passions into practical results? I believe that if there was ever a time to dedicate yourself to your country and to the principles of your country, there is no greater time than now. I do not believe in a fate that will fall on us no matter what we do. I do believe, however, in a fate that will fall on us if we do nothing. For if we do nothing, then all is lost. This is our time. Thank you very much.